women's rights are constitutionally equal to human rights. But is it so at all the level of execution? That is the question. Do strong laws deter practitioners from denying human rights to women? Sadly, the answer is no. Not a single country in the world has yet achieved complete gender justice. They do attempt to assert their rights, but in vain. If we take India in particular, say for example, you have to look at the mental health condition of women also. You cannot avoid the mental health condition of women and go on talk about the challenges faced by them or the rights enjoyed by them. In India, the mental health challenges faced by women are directly proportionate to the chauvinistic tendencies they are forced to tackle on a daily basis and the pressures of marginalization experienced by them in their workplace. Gender inequality, which has been naturalized in an otherwise so-called civilized world, forms the foundation for the challenging mental complications faced by women in India. Oddly, despite the efforts of the human rights organization, this aspect has yet to be tackled in depth. Well, the polluted male centricism in many a workplace is the direct result of centuries of domestic upbringing of people from birth. We are still paying lip service to women's rights as it does not sprout from a concern for human rights. So, what is the purpose of this paper? This paper intends to create a well-rounded awareness among people who want to move beyond justice for women and work towards the development with the recognition that it is human development. Its intention is not only to talk about the issues, but also to brainstorm some possible solutions for a better tomorrow. See, in several parts of India, I'm taking India because we are all familiar with that. Though I am living in Singapore, I had been born and brought up in India for my university education before I moved on to Singapore. So I'm just establishing the point of contact where both of us are familiar with that. Indian women are living in a society that has become numb and insensitive to the negative life experiences triggered by social stigma, societal backlash, victim blaming, exposure to violence, objectification, discrimination, and socio-economic inequality, which in turn leads to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, and ultimately to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And still, we falsely believe that women's rights are recognized as human rights. Only when we observe and understand that many Indian women have allowed themselves to be treated as sacrificial goats, we can realize the root of this problem. Say, for example, violence against women takes place as it is not recognized as fundamental human right violation. Say, if you commit murder, if you steal, if a burglary happens, all these fall under human right violation. The criminals are doing human right violation. Then if it is done against a woman, how can it be how can it fall under women's right only? It is a fundamental human rights violation. Until we as a society realize this, there's no panacea for that. When sexual abuse, rape, and such other crimes take place, our society remains as a victim-blaming society. How many of us will acknowledge it even? See, as long as we don't realize it, there's no point in even talking about it. See, in a victim-blaming society, women's rights will remain as human rights only on paper. Singapore's law minister, Mr. K. Shanmugam, considers that gender equality is possible only with a deep mindset change. What he has said about the penalties against sexual violence should be an eye-opener to the entire Asian society. Penalty against sexual violence should not be seen as penalizing an offense. Penalty against sexual violence is penalizing against violation of fundamental human values. Unless we acknowledge that, law will not be able to tackle abuse against women, rape, etc. So unless the safety of women and their rights to have their voices heard are considered as fundamental values of any country, neither women empowerment nor nation building on that basis is possible. When this is not possible, how can women's rights be considered as human rights? That is the question. See, at this juncture, we are forced to investigate the role played by child rearing. And before we go further, let me see, give me a moment. Yeah. At this juncture, we are forced to investigate the role played by child rearing, cultural stereotypes imposed upon generations of human beings, impact of chauvinistic media, gender stereotypical input transmitted by the schools and other social setup. We have to look at all these things if we are going to talk about women's right or even human right. Sex-typed individuals process and integrate information that is in line with their gender. Even before a child is 1 year old, in our typical Indian household, children used to wear what is deemed as gender-appropriate clothes by the society. Say, for example, a 1 year old, we give her a frock, and a 1 year old boy, we give him a shorts, something like that. The moment they grow further, they used to learn gender-appropriate language usage. For example, until a few years ago, in some Tamil-speaking communities, the patriarchal figures were addressed as Ninga, Vanga, Utkarunga, Epidrikinga, like that with an Inga, you know. And when addressing the matriarchal figures, there was an option to address them with the respectful Inga or simply a singularly disrespectful Vapo, even by very young children. We have experienced it, but we have not analyzed the reasons behind it or the impact of it. The same is true for the Hindi-speaking community as well, not necessarily for Tamil-speaking. Hindi-speaking also, the respectful up was reserved for the patriarchy, and when it came to address the matriarchy, there's an option to address the matriarchy as tu or tum, equivalent to ni, ning, ni, un, like that. So very young children get a negative societal impact when they adapt to these nuances. In several Indian communities, asking the girl children to take care of cleaning, cooking, serving food, baby care, and assigning the heavy mechanical work to the boys have led to several layers of gender stereotyping. Please, don't argue with yourself saying that, oh, no. Nowadays, my mother has told my brother also to clean the table. No. We are talking about something else more fundamental than this. The immediate reaction of delegating household duties for both the children belonging to both the genders should be automatic for the parent. That is what I mean. It is these kind of instilled factors that do not allow Indian women to realize the kind of mire they have been immersing themselves so far. This has led not only to gender issues with the opposite sex, but also to intra-gender issues, where the senior generation of women that has been groomed with these kinds of values become a threat to the so-called new revolutionary women who simply want to assert themselves and break these stereotypes. An army of mothers in-laws with very oppressive values are formed, and their values directly clash with another army of daughters and daughters-in-law who are caught up midway between a complete understanding of their own worth and what they have realized so far. As a result, normalizing abusive behavior within a household has been accepted. It has been accepted as the norm of our life. Whenever a man is subjected to any kind of domestic abuse or discrimination in the workplace, People have risen against crimes against men. When it comes to a woman, same courtesy is not extended to her. That is my point. In the workplace, she is expected to be appreciative of the man who provides her the job. And the domestic area, she is expected to be appreciative of the man who has married her. See, this is the problem with our cultural setup. Though the immensity of the problem is felt more in Asian countries than in the Western countries, we cannot automatically assume that women's rights are recognized as human rights throughout the world. Western countries also, they have their own bunch of problems. Murdering and stealing are seen as universal crimes, but in some culture, domestic abuse is not a crime. Domestic violence against wives, mothers, daughters, sisters is not fully recognized as crimes. And now we come to the most crucial point, which many of us do not recognize or do not want to acknowledge in the public. There is something called a marital rape. Marital rape is not a criminal offense in India, but the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, PWDVA of 2005, provides a civil remedy to this. What is marital rape? It's not rape done by another man on you. It's done by the husband on the wife without the consent of the woman. For example, in between the married couple, if one of them say no, it means no. If they refuse to respect it, it is equivalent to rape. Simple. So PWDVA considers marital rape to be a form of domestic violence and allows victim to seek judicial separation from their husband. But how many of us will go to that extent is a big question mark. In India, it's not considered rape if a man forces sex or sexual acts on his wife, as long as she is over 18, due to an exception in a British colonial era law. More Western and common law jurisdictions have long since rectified this loophole in their own law. Britain outlawed marital rape in 1991, for example, and it is illegal in all 50 US states. But across the world, about 40 countries do not have legislation that addresses the issue of a marital rape, and among those that do, the penalties for non-consensual sex within the marriage are significantly lower than other rape cases, according to the United Nations Population Fund's 2021 State of World Population Review. Mariam Dawale, General Secretary of All India Democratic Women's Association, one of the petitioners fighting for criminalization, said, "Consent inside and outside of marriage are not two different things. Consent is consent," she said. In our country, a woman is not thought of as an independent human being, as an independent citizen of the country. She is like sort of an appendage to the husband. She is subordinate. She is not a separate identity as such. Dawale said marital rape is a big part of the violence reported by women who seek help from her organization. But they